Well, the picture on the front of your bulletin, and this one that's up on the screen, I know it is a rather unusual picture, to say the least, right? Here you've got this sort of primitive-looking sheep cote or sheep pen, and at the gate you've got a couple of security cameras set up to protect the sheep, right? Well, that's not the way that shepherds do it, but I just came up with this picture as an illustration to help you get a picture in your mind of what Jesus was talking about here. See, often in Jesus' day, when shepherds would have to find pasture for their sheep, when, especially some areas where the vegetation was limited, they would have to, travel a certain distance, and then they couldn't just, go back home at night and put the sheep in the pen, but they had to stay out in the wilderness and then go on from there to another place where there was some more stuff for the sheep to eat. If you were sheep herding goats, it would be the same deal, because they tend to clip that stuff down pretty close when they eat. But how would a shepherd out in the wilderness with a bunch of sheep protect them through the night when there were out in the wilderness? In Jesus' day, there were still some lions out in the wilds of Judea. There were bears and there were wolves. How do you protect the sheep in a situation like that? Well, the shepherds would drag together a bunch of brush or sticks or whatever they could find and make one of these almost circular enclosures and leave it open in one place, like right here, for the sheep to go in and come out. And then that would be where, during the night, the shepherd would lie down and use his body to protect the sheep, to keep them from going out and wandering and come to harm at night in the dark, and also to prevent any thieves or any predators from coming in and taking any of the sheep. Naturally, shepherds didn't have any kind of security systems. I mean, they didn't even have those dummy security cameras that you could buy for $5 or $6 and stick up around your house or place of business to try to make people think that they're being videoed as they're around your property. But the ultimate security system for the sheep in Jesus' day was a good shepherd who used his body as a shield for the sheep, to protect them and to keep that in. So think about the significance of Jesus' words. Jesus spoke about protecting his own in a dangerous world. Like I said, it was, so here's a picture. I got ahead of myself. Here is a picture of a stone sheepcote in the Middle East, and you see where the shepherd is, sitting there in the entryway to keep the sheep from getting out and keep anything bad from getting in to get to the sheep. Well, in Jesus' day, there were plenty of predators. There were wolves, like I said, and bears and lions. And there were also thieves, sheep rustlers, we'd call them today. But the thieves and robbers were one of the dangers that Jesus talked about in this passage. And, sometimes when we start talking about the culture of the time, sometimes it's easy to think that when Jesus came teaching and preaching, it was just a matter of people asking, okay, is he the Messiah or is he not? But it was more complicated than that, because when you read the histories, there were a lot of would-be messiahs that came out and tried to get followers in public, claiming to be the Christ, and Jesus said it was going to keep up. He said, many will come in my name, claiming I am the Christ. So it wasn't just like, who is Jesus? It was out of all of these people claiming to be the Messiah, are any of them the real deal, or are they all frauds? And you know, sometimes those fakes can make it really difficult to pick out the real deal. And if you just consider one thing and its integrity, it is a lot easier than if you have lots and lots of false things or lots of camouflage out of which to try to pick the real thing. And Jesus dismissed all of those other would-be messiahs as thieves and robbers because they were only interested in their own glory or some other thing rather than doing that for the good of the people. The other group that Jesus talked about were the hirelings or hired men. They don't own the sheep, he said. It's just a job. They're just there to, earn their money, put in their time, but they don't really care about the people and about helping the people. And I think a lot of the religious leaders in Jesus' day, the people who had him arrested, the people who persecuted him, the people who finally manipulated the Romans into killing him, I think that those folks are some of the hirelings that Jesus talked about. Hirelings are always happy to lord it over people, to try to control them, but they're not the ones who will sacrifice themselves for the good of the people. They're not the ones who are willing to be the gate for the sheep, to use their body as protection. Jesus also said, and I know this isn't in here, Gene, you're trying to follow me, but Jesus also said that his own sheep know his voice. Any of you who've worked with animals or have pets know that that's the case. Those animals know your voice. My dad, he had a cow-calf operation, but it turns out he had about 40 pets that were big Black Angus pets, and he talked to them. I sort of inherited that from my dad, so when I talk to our dog or things, that's just the way we are, It's not like I think they're going to answer, but Dad named one of our bulls Thunda, which is Czech for Tony, and Thunda was so gentle that my nephew used to ride around on his back, and because these animals were so tame, they knew Dad, they knew his voice, they knew his family and who he was protecting, and it made a difference. There's a bond there. I'm sure that Sherry has a bond with the goats. The same way, all they have to do is hear her voice, and boy, they're right there at the fence or at the feeding trough or wherever. But, it's the same way with us, that if we really pay attention, there are times when we can tell when God is doing something. And there's a part inside of us that gets all excited when we know that God is at work. So, Jesus said, his sheep know his voice. Now, going back to what I had written here, Gene, during the American Revolution, there had been some Methodist preachers that came over to this country to help the colonists grow spiritually, to develop congregations. And there were two of them that John Wesley ordained and sent over to this country, Coke and Asbury. And when the American Revolution broke out, all of the Methodist preachers from England returned there at the order of the Archbishop of Canterbury, except one. That was Francis Asbury. Asbury stayed in America, and because of that, he was labeled as a traitor. He was hunted by the English. He had to hide in people's barns or cellars, and sometimes there's even an account that he had to hide in the swamp just to avoid arrest by the English, because if they caught him, they'd hang him. But he felt like that the Christians here in America, who were part of the Methodist group, needed to have pastoral leadership. And he risked his own life. He put his body in the way, on the line, as the shepherd for the sheep in America in those days. Asbury followed Jesus, the Good Shepherd, who gave his body. He risked his life to protect the people of God. Jesus not only kept away thieves and robbers, but he kept away hirelings, or tried to keep away hirelings who had just stood by and let the people be torn apart. So, as we come to this time, we remember that Jesus laid down his life for us. And he said not only did he lay it down, his Father had given him authority to take his life up again. And that is at the heart of what we believe. That Jesus not only died for our sins, but that he rose again according to what he said, according to the promise of God.